fracking of formations with water at very high pressure. Through this fracturing, it's possible to release gas which would otherwise not be exploitable. Tiny gas bubbles enclosed in the host formation, which through the fracturing can be released and collected at the surface. The downside is that hydraulic fracturing is really complicated. You need to drill a well, first vertically, then horizontally. You need to introduce water or a fracking fluid at very high pressure. First, the fluid needs to be slippery in order to break the host formation. Then it needs to become viscous in order to transport propellants. Those are sand or little grains that keep the fractures open. And finally, this viscosity needs to be broken up again in order to release the gas and collect it at the surface. The problem is this involves a lot of chemicals. Elaborate chemicals that industry has spent much effort to invent. Gale-forming agents are needed in order to carry the propellants. Scale inhibitors are needed in order to prevent precipitation of minerals. Bacterial growth needs to be avoided with biocides. Non-emulsifiers need to be added in order to keep everything in solution, and so on and so on. Because of this know-how that is involved, still we know not a lot about these chemicals. Some have been declared, others not. Hardly any samples have been analyzed to see what chemicals are really in, and this has created a lot of uncertainty about the environmental impacts of hydraulic fracturing. We know very little about how what chemicals exactly we deal with, how these chemicals behave if they are introduced into shallow groundwater, our drinking water resource, and for that reason, very controversial public discussions have taken place. What we do is we try to get an idea of what we're actually talking about. We look at the chemicals that have been declared, come up with lists which list these chemicals by their chemical structure, by the number of times they have been reported, and we actually try and analyze field samples to see whether these chemicals match those that are found in the field. So what our aim is to do the much needed research that is actually necessary to get a picture of the chemicals added, the fracking chemicals, get a picture of the chemicals that are released from underground in the formation water, and by this form the basis for assessments, for risk assessments, and for a much needed evaluation of the dangers of or the environmental impacts of hydraulic fracturing that are needed for decision making to come up with appropriate policies about fracking.